Okay, Amy, on heat for 5 seconds and then actually start it like normal, yeah?
Okay.
And then leave it running, yeah, if it starts.
Yeah, obviously. Okay, on. Heat. 2, 3, 4, 5. Nothing.
Turn off.
Not even turned over.
No.
We are supposed to be and want to be out at sea crossing the Indian Ocean. This is the story of our failed attempt to cross this ocean. Ah, right on my head! From the engine not starting to being becalmed with no sign of any wind on the horizon.
It sucks, but it kind of feels like just we could be drifting for a ridiculous amount of time.
We are Amy and Matt. After 5 years sailing around the world together on our 37-foot yacht Florence, we are now facing our biggest challenge yet, crossing the Indian Ocean. Two, 3, 4, 5. Nothing.
The engine's not starting. We thought it might just be the starter battery not fully charged, but we tried starting it with the house batteries and that didn't work either, which is very worrying because it means it maybe might be the starter motor and I've no idea how we'd get one of them out here. So what we've got to do now is strip out everything out the back of the boat so we can follow the wiring looms round and make sure we've got no volt drops or bad connections there. And also to actually get to the batteries and measure the voltage at the batteries, which are underneath everything on the quarter berth. Having a problem with the engine when we're far away from mechanics or any parts shops is kind of like my worst nightmare on board. So we checked through all of the wiring for any volt drops and it seemed like there was too much of a volt drop between the engine and the switch panel, the ignition switch on deck. So I put a switch directly across the ignition to the starter solenoid here on the engine, so that eliminates all of that wiring. And I was really hopeful that this would actually fix it, but I flicked the switch and still nothing, which means we've been through the rest of the wiring as well. There's no other volt drops. It all looks good. So that means it's either the starter motor or the starter battery. Measuring at the starter battery, it does drop quite low when we try to turn the engine over. So we're really hopeful actually that it is the starter battery, because hopefully we might be able to get another one of those here, even though we're pretty much out in the middle of nowhere. Any car starter battery should do. So we're going to head ashore and see if we can find one. We got lucky that there's a little store in the village here which actually had a battery which was good enough to start our engine and that we could buy. So we managed to get that back to Florence, and thankfully now and also it now starts with the key in the cockpit, which I think must have been a problem with the wiring loom between the cockpit switch and the engine, and because we took everything apart and cleaned it all, I think that problem's gone away now. We don't get the same volt drop, so that's good as well. But what it has done is flagged up that our house batteries, which should have been able to start the engine but couldn't, are probably not in as good a condition as we thought they were. We knew they were getting old, and we were actually planning to have replaced them by now because we were planning to be in South Africa last year. So hopefully that we can still make them last as far as South Africa when we can replace them with something better.
Well, it's a massive relief to have finally got the engine working again. And after waiting a couple of weeks, it looks like we also might finally have a weather window to leave to cross the Indian Ocean.
So we've been poring over the weather for weeks and weeks now. It's been 2 weeks since we almost set off and didn't, and there's been no wind in that time until very recently when we've had strong northerly winds, so we had to go and hide in the mangroves. But those are just going through, and we're looking at possibly going on the back edge of those. So we've just come out of the mangroves. In a minute we're going to hop over the side and give the hull a scrub off so she's clean, ready to go. But this weather window is not ideal. We're trying to go on the back of this breeze, which means the sea state's going to be a little bit rough, and it does say that in a few days time we will run out of wind. But this is the first time that the models have kind of agreed in a long time, and if we don't take this, it looks like we could be waiting, well, as far as the forecast goes, there's no wind again, which is another 2 weeks, which would mean we've been waiting here for over a month. So, not ideal, but we're going to give it a go. I actually feel pretty anxious about this. This weather window, as we said before, isn't perfect, but it's the best we think we're going to get. So you don't really know in this part of the world whether you're going to get too much wind or too little wind, but it's probably going to be one or the other, not exactly what we'd like. Nice trade wind sailing, certainly for the first week. So yeah, my stomach's a bit tied up in knots, to be honest. I feel a bit anxious, a little bit shaky. It's a bit of anxiety. I'm sure it'll all be okay once we get going. It's pretty rainy and drizzly. It's not like your perfect day to set off, and we've only got about 7 or 8 knots of wind.
Yeah, we're both feeling anxious and nervous about this passage. It's not that the passage looks potentially dangerous in terms of the weather that we're going to get, but I think it's going to be very uncomfortable.
Been feeling really excited for a long time about crossing the ocean. It's only when we come to go and do it, start feeling really kind of nervous about it. I think the human brain's really good at forgetting all the bad things and remembering all the good things, and just as we get to the point of actually departing, we remember some of the more tricky periods crossing oceans, like, you know, squalls and breaking the boom on the Atlantic, and yeah.
And I remember before we set off across the Atlantic and saying that I was just nervous because I didn't know what to expect, and now, having done a couple of ocean crossings, I know what to expect and I know how uncomfortable it's going to be, and that's what's making me nervous.
Bye bye Mentawai Island, hello Indian Ocean. We just motored for about 20 minutes to get into the pass, and we're now coming out the pass with the tide, making like 6 or 7 knots. Just turn the engine off and we're now sailing. Long may it continue. So the breed's got a bit aft, we put the spinnaker up, hold it round so we can run a bit lower with it rather than having it on the bow. But the waves are slopping the mainsail around as well, so we're just going to put a preventer just in the middle of the boom just to hold that down and stop the boom flopping around in the waves and stop it shaking all the wind out the sails. This is more like it. And it can be like this all the way, although at 3.6 knots it might take a while. Well, it's a relief to have set off, but the forecasted wind isn't here yet. We're only just able to sail at the moment, making about 3 knots with the spinnaker up. It's very stressful making the decision of whether or not to leave, but once you've left, you haven't got any choice, you've just got to deal with what you've got. So at the moment we're heading southwest, and we should be heading southwest for about 4 days. The wind should increase and give us a bit more speed on this angle, and then we should get to a ridge where we'll probably end up with a big hole of no wind for a little while. But that's 4 days away, and who knows, the forecast at the moment changes so much. I don't know if it's going to be the same in 4 days. At the moment we just make the most of going forwards under sail instead of having to motor.
I don't feel any of those nerves that we felt when we left this morning. It's partly due to the fact that it's so beautiful and calm out here, which is definitely not what we expected. We prepared the storm jib and the staysail rather than the spinnaker, but it's also the fact that just taking that initial step of leaving is always the most difficult part, especially when you've been working up to an ocean passage like we have for so long. I mean, we've planned to do this last year, and we've been trying to constantly keep ourselves ready since then, and particularly the last few months have just been constantly working through lists, and I've been occasionally waking up earlier or in the night and thinking, oh, we must check that, or we must buy that, and then when you finally do leave, none of that's important anymore. Now it's just a case of dealing with whatever weather we get and whatever problems we get as they come. Just preparing for my first off watch, so we're just about to go into night watches, and just having a moment to look at the horizon and appreciate the fact that there's nothing between us and Africa. We're going to be moving from one continent to another. The stronger winds that we're expecting this afternoon don't really seem to have filled in, so we're going to be carrying the spinnaker through the night, but we'll have to be keeping a very close eye on it. So I might get woken up halfway through my off watch. I can see a cloud bank on the horizon, the sun's just dipping behind one, so that might bring some wind with it, and we might have to quickly take this down. Beautiful sunrise this morning, but we had a bit of everything during the night. I think it's going to certainly keep us busy, the weather on this part of the passage. Can't see land behind us anymore, but the horizon is not looking very friendly. It's 6:30 in the morning, Matt's still sleeping, and I've just put 2 reefs into the mainsail because I can see a massive squall cloud that we're just approaching. Normally you can tell how much wind it's going to generate between how tall the cloud is and how little space there is at the bottom of it. So this is a huge cloud, and it's very close to the water at the bottom, so if it does start raining, it can potentially kick out quite a lot of wind. So I've put 2 reefs in the mainsail. Hopefully that will be enough, but if it's not, then it will be easy to put in the 3rd.
Unfortunately, we've been motoring through most of the night due to a lack of wind. The good thing about these rain squalls is that they do bring wind, allowing us to sail for a short while, but it's usually 25 to 30 knots for a short spell, and then back to light winds in the rain. The only wind we've been getting is what comes on the front edge of these rain squalls, allowing for short spurts of sailing in between the motoring, but it means a lot of sail changes for very little actual sailing.
It's a bit wet, but we are sailing. Ah, right on my head! The tyres.
Well, morning wake up call, 1 squall.
First squall of the day.
Yeah,
I was at 1 o'clock this morning.
Yeah, that was at 1 o'clock this morning. Didn't last very long though, then the wind died completely again. We're about 24 hours in and it's not a good morning. It wasn't a good night. The wind that was forecast to be here is not here. We've got 4 knots of wind and the slop is just slatting the wind out the sails. We can't actually sail in that little wind with this sort of sea state. That's not the only thing that's gone wrong. Went to have a look at the weather files and my laptop got the blue screen of death, Windows, and I can't recover it out here. That's our main way of looking at grid files, to look at the weather forecast. And we do have other ways, so we downloaded the weather and we had a look at the weather. And the forecast, the winds that were due to be here are not here. It's all kind of moving out in front of us. So we would have to do more motoring to get to it. And we only have so much diesel. We've already used up 10% of our available diesel reserves. So we just turned the engine off to because we were motoring, just turn the engine off to contemplate. And we're considering turning back. We're only 70 miles out. We'd use another couple of cans of diesel to get back. But it just looks like the wind that was forecast is getting lighter and further away from us, and the other side of that wind is probably another hole. And it sucks, but it kind of feels like we could be drifting for a ridiculous amount of time. We don't want to go back, but we kind of think it probably is the right decision. We're only 70 miles away, so it takes about 14 hours to get back to we motor, which we'll have to because there's no wind. It was never the best weather window to go on. There was a lot of discussion between us about it, and probably my fault. I was a bit too optimistic. In fact, we thought it was going to be too windy, and we were a bit worried about having too much wind, and it's just disappeared. So, turn back and go and restock with some more fresh food and fuel and water, and wait longer. But we're not going anywhere in this, literally.
Well, here we are, we're back exactly where we started from. It wasn't a very easy decision to make to turn around, especially because it's actually the first time that we've ever turned around on a passage, but we think it was the right one. And it's taken us a few days to get over the frustration of having to turn around. We've used that time to restock the boat with fuel, and luckily we had a big rain squall which allowed us to refill the water tanks. So we're back on standby, and it's looking like potentially at least a week before we'll get another opportunity to try leaving. But in the meantime, this isn't such a bad place to hang out.
Join us next time for our second attempt to cross 3,000 miles of Indian Ocean, when hopefully we won't be turning back.
If you enjoyed this, please subscribe and click the bell to get a notification when the next video is released. And let us know what you think of the video. We love reading all your comments.
These videos would not be possible without the support of some very special people. We would like to thank everyone who supports us, and especially our star patrons.